Thanks to our video sponsor, Hone Health. Did you know testosterone levels have decreased dramatically over generations? Do you feel tired all the time, struggle with concentrating, or have low energy? It could be because you have low testosterone levels. As I've gotten older, I have less focus than I used to have and more fatigue. And it's really frustrating because it really affects what I love to do, which is create tiny house videos. The thing is, this is not our fault. There are many factors that affect our generation. There are several misconceptions about it, but optimizing your testosterone can lead to increased energy, increased muscle mass, better focus, and a better overall mood. Hone Health helps men get testing and treatment for low testosterone from the comfort of their home. The entire process is really easy. All you have to do is collect your sample and mail it back to the lab. Once the results are ready, you will get a video chat with a real doctor who will recommend a personalized treatment plan based on your biometrics and symptoms. For a limited time only, get the at-home testing and a doctor consult for only $45. See the link in the description or go to honehealth.com/tinyhouse.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Noah, and this is our tiny house here in Escalante Village in Durango, Colorado. I think I remember us just watching some of the shows and going, oh, these people are insane. There's no way we couldn't possibly ever do that. And then, I don't know, started kind of thinking about it as we got ready for a change in our lives. And, we're kind of ready to get out of the city and started feeling like a viable way for us to kind of explore and adventure and, break the kind of the standard bonds, I guess, that were holding us in Chicago for many years.
But still, have a piece of home with us. So we looked at RVs, and I just wasn't super jazzed about it. It didn't really appeal to me. And then we talked about the tiny house, and at first it was yeah, right, that's not going to work. And then gradually, this one, he's usually like a dog with a bone. I gave him the idea of maybe designing it ourselves, and he was off to the races. So we saw it as kind of a way to change things up. We both were ready to leave, not just the city, but I think Chicago overall. We were looking for a new place to live and settle. And the tiny house seemed more fun and more cozy and homey.
Yeah, and even after the trip, I think we were considering already that it would be a more economical way to land somewhere. And I think we definitely found that here in Durango, that it became a great way to be able to move here.
Yeah.
And we just lucked out that you guys told us about Escalante and looked into it and contacted Bob, and sure enough, so
worked out. So it was always our plan to travel in our tiny house. We did plan out how long we wanted to do it. Initially, we thought about 1.5 to 2 years if we could squeeze it. It ended up being more like 9 months because we had planned to go on from Durango, but this one had always wanted to move to Durango. And so we ended up kind of staying here, although we hope to continue our trip at some point. But we very purposely chose our route too, so we went east first, tried to stick to the national parks was kind of our goal. And so we hit Shenandoah and Smoky Mountains, and we tried to spend a good amount of time in each place. So the plan was not to rush the travel. Whenever you're usually on a vacation, you've got to hurry up. And in this case, we wanted to be able to really get to know the place and stay a minimum of a couple of weeks, sometimes longer. We were in Savannah for about a month. Yeah. We stayed in Port Aransas and for the winter for about another month, and outside of Big Bend.
Got to experience two hurricanes during our time on the East Coast. Fortunately, we were on the tail edge. It's the nice part about being able to pick up and move your house.
Our tiny house is 170 square feet. It is 24 feet long and 8.5 feet wide.
We designed it and had it built in Illinois and traveled in it for 10,000 miles.
And our tiny house has all steel siding. We did want the cedar in the middle to kind of add a little bit of pop to it. When we chose a really bright door color, also for some character.
Why don't you join us inside?
Welcome inside our home.
So this is our entryway, and we have a nice separated space for our living room down here. So we made this so that we could have some good space for us to have our separate zones in our tiny house. Made it a little bit cozier instead of great room style. And there's room for the dog. Come on, Luna. Come on. Luna didn't travel with us. We used to have record crates where her crate is now, but we wouldn't change that for anything. But it's a nice area for us to be able to sit back and relax, listen to music, watch movies. One of the great things about being here in Durango is out our window. We have a beautiful view of the Purple Cliffs, and yeah, it's hard to go wrong with that. A little bit of cliffs, a little bit of our garden outside. Cozy love seat that all three of us do fit on when Luna isn't taking up most of it.
Our living room's also our closet, so we have a custom-built wardrobe here that actually Noah built for us. So we have drawers from IKEA that slide in. They're actually twice as long as your typical, 13 by 13 cube. So we actually have quite a bit of storage down here. We each get 4, and then we have all this hanging space up here. And behind there, what it conceals is actually our solar system. So we have solar panels on the roof, and then we have a giant solar battery behind here that we can access through the wardrobe. One big advantage of traveling in your tiny house is that you're bringing your home with you. So one of the things that I loved most about it, not having any kind of camping background, city girl through and through, was just the idea that we were camping, but we also had our house with us. So we could, the weather got bad, we were in Bryce Canyon, and it decided to snow. It was close to the beginning of June, I think, and it decided to snow. And all these poor people in their tents were just sitting out there freezing while we sat in our tiny house watching one of our DVDs.
Yeah.
So that was amazing.
I think one of my favorite sites was, again, at the tail end, but in Arches National Park. Somehow we got this spot that was right on kind of the highest point in the campground before it kind of ducks back down, and had 4G service, and we're actually able to sit in the campground at night and watch the finale of Game of Thrones. So yeah, it's kind of an odd, juxtaposition of having all of the amenities of home, and yet just being able to visit these absolutely amazing places and feel like you could just go right back home. And long hike, we'd grab a camp shower afterwards and be able to kick our feet up and cook a delicious meal and the whole thing. It was awesome. So we chose the Instagram hashtag MotoTiny because we did bring our motorcycles with us on our trip. And the motorcycles rode in the bed of the truck, and then of course the tiny house was a bumper pole or travel trailer style. So definitely a lot of weight going down the road. Our tiny house is 14,000 pounds going down the road, and takes a pretty serious vehicle to be able to tow it. If you have the right vehicle, it's really not too big of a problem, but it was definitely nerve-wracking going into it, wondering if we had the right truck to be able to do it all with all of that weight.
Yeah, well, and the truck we had is not the truck we have now. We had a Ford F-350 dually, so massive truck, 8.5 foot bed, so that the motorcycles would fit side by side, which he got to do all the driving up the ramps. I wasn't touching that.
But being able to have kind of the excursion vehicles that also were just a whole lot of fun to ride in the places that we were traveling was definitely a highlight.
This level is actually right on the trailer bed, so it's the lowest level of the house. The rest of the house is actually up a couple of steps on a higher level for the kitchen and bathroom, which we'll show you next.
So you can see the steps, but that's not just for fun. We actually did that for a real purpose. So since we wanted to be able to travel and off-grid in our tiny house, right under here we have an 80-gallon fresh water tank. We have some storage panels underneath that work as pantry and miscellaneous storage. And then we also have the other utilities. Our water heater, our water pump, and our gray tank are all underneath the floor.
So over here we have our custom-made breakfast bar that actually Noah put together for us. Had it installed as both our place to eat all of our meals, as well as our office, miscellaneous, just extra place to sit. It's kind of multi-purpose. And I joke that one of my favorite things about living in a tiny house is that you can actually sit here, mess with the stove. So if I've got, water boiling, I can quickly turn it off. It's one of the advantages of a tiny house. Everything's immediately accessible.
This is the kitchen, and I do love to cook, so we had to have a kitchen that works for us. So our refrigerator is kind of like a 3/4 size fridge. We have some decent cabinet space, kind of a standard 4-burner stove. Now, one of the things that we find is so important in tiny home living is having more space than you could imagine. So when our builders put in the cabinets, they didn't do a real tiny house view on this because they put in this spacer. We are dreaming of the day when we finally get up the guts to just knock it out and put some shelves or something back there and make that a usable space, because of course you want all the usable space you can possibly get. Then we have our sink. It's a fairly deep sink, no dishwasher, so we have the tiny little Camco dish drying rack, and honestly it works pretty well because it's small enough to stick in miscellaneous places. We have over here, of course, some prep area on the butcher block. Below is kind of our catch-all pantry. It didn't used to be this. This was actually a washer-dryer, a single ventless washer-dryer unit that we just found didn't dry clothes very well at all on the road. We donated this somewhere along the way on our trip to a Habitat for Humanity, literally pushed it out the door and said, can you guys use this? And they could. So, and then built some makeshift shelves and bought random bins at Walmarts and various other stores around the country as we found stuff that were the proper measurements to fit in there. Some more cabinet space, and everything is dual purpose. So should I open this and show the mess? But it's food, it's coffee stuff, it's dishes, it's kind of anything and everything, because of course there's limited space. And then as we kind of come back around, under here is where our big humbless battery power unit is. And of course this is the back of the wardrobe, which gives us that kind of nice separation between the two spaces. So this is really where our kind of our control center is. We aren't in here as much as we used to be when we were off grid and we would turn off everything we weren't using, but of course the power switch and then your typical control center from an RV basically that gives us our tank levels and our things like that. Not the battery power, because that's all handled down here, water pump switch and things like that.
And back here is the bathroom. We actually have a pretty large shower, 2 feet by 4 feet. It's bigger than the one we had in Chicago in our condo. And then we have your basic amenities. We have a low water toilet and a sink, our little medicine cabinet here where we can store stuff. And then we also installed another storage unit here to be both a towel rack and additional storage. We have a standard toilet now, but while we were traveling, we had a composting toilet here. So you'll actually see the panel here covers the hose that used to go outside. It was great while we were traveling, but once we decided to stay in one place, we decided to upgrade to a regular toilet. We also have extra storage here in the form of a hatch. So like the one in the kitchen, we're able to access storage, and then also there's some utilities off to the side here that gives us better access. And finally, we have a pocket door to save on space, necessary in any good tiny home, so that we can maximize the bathroom space. As far as how we funded the trip, we decided not to work while we were traveling. So a big part of what we wanted to do was get out of our current jobs. We were in corporate America, working telecom, and just not feeling fulfilled, among other things. And so the timing kind of worked out that we were ready to leave the city. So we saved up for a couple of years, enough money to support ourselves on the road without working, which was very scary for me. I have never not had a job, so that was that was a bit unnerving at first. But we budgeted really well. We actually had a pretty good nest egg when we landed here. We specifically stopped so that he could start his own woodworking business. And so it was a passion for him when we were in Chicago. It was a hobby there, and he turned it into the real deal here.
A lot of those tools were the only thing we really kept. We sold the condo, we sold all the furniture, we pretty much sold almost everything.
Yeah, and for me, I desperately wanted to work in nonprofit and was lucky enough to find a role here where I can do that. I work for Tri-County Head Start, and so I'm on the back end. I'm not amazing with kids. I don't think they'd want me in the classroom, but I love supporting them and supporting the program and hopefully making it better for our kids and families. So it's pretty awesome that we get to do that.
And one of the reasons we unfortunately cut the trip short was because decided we wanted to open the wood shop and needed some investment funds in order to be able to do that. So when I finally convinced her to move to Durango, we were able to invest in my woodworking business, and it's been awesome. Running my business, I know she loves working in the nonprofit and kind of giving back. So it's definitely been a 180 in what our life was for the 10 years living in Chicago prior to going on that trip. Wouldn't change a thing about it. All right, and then we have our bedroom up here. Of course, you can also see we have a mini split heater and AC, and it works pretty well. We have the fans also because that helps to actually push that air around. One of the things we really found is in the winter, it's hard to get the heat, of course, to go down into the living room. So we do use a small space heater down there. And then in the summer, it's hot up in the loft, so we flip that fan around to keep us cool while we're sleeping. So it's all about kind of circulating that air around. And of course you also see that we have our bedroom up here. One of the nice things about the split level is actually that the ladder is a little bit shorter than a typical one, so it's slightly less terrifying. We were really specific about wanting to make sure that there was enough height in the living room for me being 6'1", so that I didn't bang my head, but also so that we could sit up in bed and be able to read, and can actually sit up in the loft without usually hitting my head. All right, now we're in the loft bedroom. We have a queen size bed, memory foam mattress that's actually really pretty comfortable. Our nightstands are some floating shelves that I made for us with little depressions to keep things in place when we were traveling. And then we just use bins on either side to keep extra stuff in them. Made a nice decorative headboard so that we had a little bit of art and a little bit of something from the wood shop while we were traveling. I think one of the other great things is putting these lamps up here so that we don't always have to be using the big overhead lights. So those work as good reading lights and just a little bit mellow lights for the evening, and they stay on the wall when we're traveling. I think it's one of the interesting things to mention is that, of course, everything has to get strapped down. So even the bed, we have anchors at the end that we use to pull ratchet straps around, or cinch straps to cinch it so that it wouldn't slide around or slide off the back end when we were traveling. And as you look around our place, you'll find that we had bungees on all of the handles of every cabinet. We had straps on the refrigerator that we all but once remembered to strap. And basically everything got strapped down with a big series of cinch straps and bungees every time. It was a long checklist whenever we would pull out of a campsite.
I would say for me the biggest thing I love about tiny house living is that it's such a great way to live economically. Like, not everybody can come out of college and afford a house or a condo or whatever at this point. And so it's not only a great way to have your own home, but also if you want to travel and figure out where you want to live, you can theoretically take it with you. We have lots of neighbors that they didn't travel in it full time, but they would stay in a place for 6 months, a year, maybe more, and then they decide, I'm ready for a change, and they can move their house to a new location. So for me, I think that the tiny house really gives you a lot of financial freedom and a lot of flexibility about where you can live and check different places out.
And that is one of the great things, I think, about a kind of a, whatever you want to call it, a tiny house expedition or a, work sabbatical, unpaid sabbatical in our case. kind of taking that time to refresh. I mean, it's definitely a blessing and a privilege to be able to do that. You know, really being able to reset and find the things that make you tick, find the things that are most important to you. There's challenges along the way, but you kind of, you know, especially as a couple doing it, you kind of work through it together, and hopefully it makes you stronger. I think it did with us. And yeah, I mean, for that reason, you know, tiny house living or tiny house travel may not be for everyone, but
I think everyone should try it.
But it's sure been really, really cool.
Thank you for watching our video and for stopping by Tiny House Expedition. I'm Alexis.
And I'm Christian. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And for more tiny home tours and stories, click the videos below.
And join us on Instagram for bonus content,
including face-to-face conversations with us. We hope to see you there.
all right.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.